pretty, Bruce. But pretty doesn't drop a heavyweight. Muhammad Ali leaned back in his chair, arms folded across a chest that had absorbed punishment from the hardest men alive. He smiled, that famous smile, the one that could fill stadiums, the one that made opponents nervous before the first bell ever rang. The room went quiet. Not because Ali had said something shocking, because Bruce Lee hadn't flinched. Not a blink, not a breath. He just looked at Ali the way a surgeon looks at a problem. Calm, precise, already 3 steps ahead. And then he said something that nobody in that room expected. "You haven't seen my kicks yet." Los Angeles, 1967. The world was loud that year. Vietnam, protests, upheaval on every corner. But inside a private training facility tucked behind the noise of Culver City, 2 legends were about to occupy the same space, and the atmosphere was unlike anything those walls had ever contained. Bruce Lee was 26 years old. He was not yet the icon the world would mourn. He was not yet the man whose face would appear on posters in every continent on Earth. He was known in martial arts circles, respected, talked about in hushed tones by people who had watched him move and couldn't quite explain what they'd seen. But to the mainstream world, to the sports world, he was still a question mark. Muhammad Ali was not a question mark. Muhammad Ali was the answer. He was the heavyweight champion, recently stripped of his title for refusing military service, which only made him more mythic, more dangerous, more present in every room he entered. He was already being spoken of in the language of gods, fastest hands in boxing, greatest talker in sports. Physically, he was a work of architecture, 6'3", 210 pounds of orchestrated violence wrapped in a grin. He had come to Los Angeles for meetings, promotional obligations. The kind of machine that surrounds a man like Ali runs constantly, and that machine had brought him here, to this gym, to this afternoon, and someone, somewhere, thought it would be interesting if Ali and Bruce Lee met. Interesting. That word does no justice to what actually happened. The introduction was made through a mutual contact, a filmmaker who knew both men, who had seen Bruce demonstrate his methods privately and had recently spent time with Ali's training camp. He thought the two would enjoy each other. He thought there might be a conversation about speed, about footwork, about the philosophy of combat. He had no idea. The gym itself was modest by Hollywood standards. Mirrors along one wall, a heavy bag in the corner worn down the middle from years of punishment. A few people were present, maybe 9 or 10. Trainers, a photographer who'd been brought along for a different assignment entirely and almost wasn't there that day. 2 of Ali's people, a couple of Bruce's students who'd driven him over. That's it. 9, maybe 10 witnesses to what happened next. Ali was warm, expansive. He had the gift of making everyone in a room feel like they were in on a private joke with him. He shook Bruce's hand, looked him up and down with theatrical exaggeration, taking in the 5'7" frame, the lean, coiled build, and then did what Ali always did. He started talking. "Man, you are small," Ali said, drawing laughter from the room. "I've hit sides of beef bigger than you." Bruce smiled. That was the difference you noticed immediately if you were paying attention. Ali's smile was performance. Bruce's smile was stillness. They were not the same thing at all. The conversation moved. Ali talked about speed, a subject he owned, a subject he had redefined in boxing. He talked about his footwork, his ability to make a man miss, his jab that moved before the opponent's eye could register it had been thrown. Bruce listened. He didn't compete with the words. He didn't posture. He just listened, and his eyes moved across Ali the way they moved across everything, cataloging, measuring, absorbing. Then someone asked the question. One of Ali's people, a large man, former athlete, standing near the heavy bag with his arms crossed, said it half jokingly, half seriously, the way men talk when they're curious but don't want to admit it. "So, how does Kung Fu actually work against a real fighter? Against size?" The room shifted. Not dramatically, just slightly, like a barometric change before weather arrives. Ali picked it up, turned it into something bigger the way he always did, because words were his first weapon and he never wasted an opportunity. "Yeah, Bruce, show me something. I'm standing right here." He spread his arms, an invitation, or possibly a dare, possibly both. And Bruce Lee looked at the most dangerous man in the world and said simply, "All right." Nobody laughed after that. The photographer, a man named Carter, who would later describe this afternoon in a private letter never intended for publication, said the atmosphere changed the moment Bruce said the word, like the air got heavier. Bruce moved to the center of the floor. He didn't remove his jacket immediately. He stood relaxed, feet shoulder-width apart, hands loose at his sides. Nothing about his posture suggested preparation. Nothing about him looked like a man about to demonstrate anything to anyone. That was the first thing Ali noticed. Ali had been around fighters his whole life. He knew what ready looked like. Tension in the shoulders, a particular stillness in the eyes. The way a man's weight settles just before he intends to do something with it. Bruce had none of that. He looked like he was waiting for a bus. Ali uncrossed his arms. He didn't do it consciously. Carter noticed it. One of Bruce's students noticed it. Ali's posture shifted. Not into alarm, not into defense, just into something more attentive. The way a predator looks when it encounters something it can't immediately classify. "Your hands," Bruce said quietly. "Show me your jab." Ali glanced around the room. This amused him. The audacity amused him. He was Muhammad Ali. He didn't demonstrate for people. People demonstrated for him. But something about the request, the total absence of intimidation in it, made him comply. He threw the jab. It was not a real jab. It was a demonstration jab, maybe 40%. But even 40% of Muhammad Ali's jab was a remarkable thing to witness in a small room. Fast, clean, the air moved. Bruce watched it. He nodded once, like a man confirming something he already suspected. Again. Ali threw it again, slightly more, maybe 50% now, his competitive instinct nudging the dial upward without his permission. Bruce's eyes tracked it. Not the hand, the shoulder, the hip, the weight transfer. He was reading the whole sentence, not just the last word. "Your right hand drops," Bruce said. Dead silence. Ali's trainer, a sharp, careful man who had spent years studying every flaw in every fighter Ali had ever faced, looked up from the corner of the room, because Bruce Lee was right. It was the smallest thing, imperceptible in a real bout, a micro-tell that existed only for a fraction of a second during the setup of the jab, something that had never cost Ali a fight, something that required an almost inhuman level of visual processing to detect at speed. Bruce had seen it on the second repetition. Ali's smile didn't disappear, but it became something different. It became, for just a moment, real. "Okay," Ali said slowly. "Okay." He looked at Bruce Lee differently now. Not with fear, Ali didn't do fear, but with the look of a man who has just discovered the problem on the chessboard he hadn't noticed 30 seconds ago. He rolled his neck, settled his stance. "So show me what you do," he said. And now his voice had a different quality. The performance was still there. Ali was always performing. But underneath it, something genuine had surfaced. Curiosity. Real, unguarded, almost boyish curiosity. Bruce removed his jacket, handed it to the side without looking. And the room, 9, maybe 10 people in it, went completely still. He didn't telegraph it. He didn't wind up. He didn't announce it. One moment he was standing there, relaxed, jacket gone. And then he simply moved. Bruce stepped forward. Not a lunge, not a charge. A step, like a man stepping across a doorway. And his right hand moved. Carter said it was the fastest thing he had ever seen in his life. He had photographed sporting events for 2 decades. He had been ringside for 3 Ali fights. He had seen the jab in real time from close quarters and thought he understood what fast meant. He didn't. Bruce's strike came within 2 inches of Ali's jaw and stopped. 2 inches. The displacement of air was enough to move a strand of Ali's hair.
Ali didn't slip it, didn't roll away from it, didn't see it coming. He felt the wind of it after it had already been retracted. The room didn't react. The room couldn't react. The room was still processing whether something had happened at all. Bruce was already back in his original position, relaxed, feet shoulder width, hands at his sides, waiting for a bus. 3 seconds had passed since he had removed the jacket. 3 seconds. Ali stood exactly where he'd been standing. He hadn't moved. His eyes a track left, instinctively chasing the afterimage of something they had almost seen. He turned his head back toward Bruce. His expression was extraordinary. Carter got one photograph. He didn't plan to take it. His hand moved automatically, the reflex of a man who had photographed enough historic moments to recognize one arriving. In the photograph, which was never published, which sat in a private collection until Carter's death, Muhammad Ali is looking at Bruce Lee. His mouth is slightly open. His eyes are wide. Not the wide eyes of fear. The wide eyes of a man experiencing genuine wonder. The look on a child's face when a magic trick violates physics. The look of a man who knows with certainty that he has just encountered something he does not have a category for. Nobody spoke. 10 seconds. 15. One of Bruce's students exhaled. It sounded enormous in the silence. Ali reached up slowly and touched the side of his jaw. Not because it hurt. Because some nerve in his body wanted to verify that the thing which had almost touched it was real. He looked at his hand, looked back at Bruce. And then, because he was Muhammad Ali and this was simply who he was, he laughed. Not the performance laugh. Not the press conference laugh. A real one. Short. Startled. Torn out of him. What was that?
That laugh broke the room open. The tension didn't disappear. It transformed, like pressure releasing through a single valve. The people standing against the walls began breathing again. Ali's trainer exhaled through his nose, slowly, the way a man does when he's just watched something he needs time to categorize. But Ali wasn't done. He was still looking at Bruce, still wearing that expression, the real one, not the show. He pointed a finger, not accusingly, almost appreciatively, the way a craftsman points at another craftsman's work when he recognizes the level of it. "Do it again," Ali said. Not a challenge this time, a request. Bruce didn't do it again, not the same way. Instead, he did something that nobody in the room expected, something that, in many ways, was more extraordinary than the strike itself. He started explaining it. He sat down, cross-legged on the floor of the gym, in the center of the space, completely without self-consciousness, and he began to talk about what he had just done. Not boastfully, not as performance. The way a physicist sits down and walks you through the equation, because the equation is what's interesting, not the man who solved it. Ali stood for a moment, uncertain. Then he sat down too. His trainer later told someone that he had never, in 15 years, seen Muhammad Ali sit on a gym floor. Ali sat in locker rooms, in private jets, on championship podiums. He did not sit on floors. He sat on the floor that afternoon. The others in the room, Carter with his camera lowered now, the students, the trainers, they all drifted inward. Nobody wanted to be far from what was being said. Bruce talked about distance, not the distance between two fighters, the internal distance, the gap between intention and execution. He said most fighters thought speed was about how fast their hands moved. It wasn't. Speed was about eliminating the distance between the decision and the action. The moment you decide to strike and the moment the strike arrives, compress that gap to nothing, and size becomes irrelevant. Reach becomes irrelevant. Weight becomes irrelevant. Ali listened with his elbows on his knees, chin forward, the way he listened when something genuinely held him. "You're saying it's not the body," Ali said. "The body follows," Bruce said. "The mind leads. Most fighters are half a second behind their own movements." Ali was quiet for a moment. "I do that," he said. "Not defensively, factually. I let the thought come first and then I move. You move before the thought completes, That's different. That's instinct. You've trained the instinct until it's faster than most men's thoughts. But there is something faster than instinct. Ali leaned forward slightly. What's faster than instinct? Bruce looked at him calmly. No mind. The room held that for a moment. Carter said the photographer in him wanted to capture the look on Ali's face at that exact second, but he didn't lift the camera. The moment felt private, felt like something that would be diminished by the intrusion of a lens. Ali sat back. His expression wasn't confused. It was the expression of a man turning a key that fits a lock he's been trying to open for years. No mind, he repeated slowly, like he was testing the weight of it. When you throw the jab, Bruce said, there is no Bruce Lee standing here analyzing your shoulder. There is only the shoulder, only the movement. The gap closes before the thought exists. Ali was quiet for a long time. Then he said, and Carter remembered this with perfect clarity because he wrote it down that same evening in his notebook. I've been in fights where time slowed down, where I wasn't thinking, where my hands were moving and I wasn't the one moving them. I always thought that was God. He paused. Maybe I was right. Bruce looked at him, and for the first time that afternoon, he smiled. Not the stillness smile, a real one. Maybe you were, he said. Nobody in that room spoke about what happened that afternoon. Not publicly, not for years. Carter didn't publish the photograph. He said later he wasn't sure why, only that it felt like publishing it would change what it was, like framing a thing that was meant to breathe free. Ali's trainer mentioned it once, obliquely, in an interview about Ali's mental approach to fighting. He described a conversation Ali had had with a martial artist in Los Angeles that he said rearranged some furniture in Ali's head. He didn't use names. The interviewer didn't push. The moment passed unmarked. One of Bruce's students, a man who would go on to teach for 30 years on the East Coast, told the story to his own students privately in a small dojo in Connecticut sometime in the mid-1980s. He described the strike, the 2 inches of clearance, the hair moving in the displaced air. His students said he always paused at that part, always looked at the floor for a moment before continuing. The thing you have to understand, he would tell them, is that Ali was not afraid. Ali was never afraid. But for a fraction of a second, Ali did not know what he was dealing with. And for Muhammad Ali, the man who stared down Sonny Liston, who stared down George Foreman in Zaire in the dark before the rumble, that fraction of a second was a universe. The story moved the way real stories move, slowly, through the right channels, gaining weight as it went. It didn't explode, it filtered. A martial artist in San Francisco heard a version of it in 1971. A boxing trainer in Detroit heard a different version 2 years later. A journalist who spent years writing about Ali came across a reference to it in a private collection of notes from someone who had been in the room, though by then 2 of the 10 witnesses had different memories of exactly what had been said and in what order. The details shifted. Stories do that. The 2 inches of clearance became an inch from some versions. The conversation about no mind became longer or shorter depending on who was telling it. But certain things remained constant across every version. Ali was the most physically gifted fighter alive. He was in that room. He threw his best demonstration jab, and Bruce Lee moved before it could find him. And afterwards, Ali, a man who had never willingly conceded ground to any opponent, physical or philosophical, sat down on a gym floor and listened. Nobody who heard the story doubted that part, because somehow, despite everything, that part felt most true. Bruce Lee died in 1973. He was 32 years old. The world stopped when it heard the news. A particular, unique kind of stop. The kind reserved for people who feel irreplaceable not just personally but conceptually. Not just as a person the world would miss, but as a living proof of something the world needed to keep believing. Ali kept fighting. He became what he became, not just a boxer but a monument. The thriller in Manila, the rumble in the jungle, Those performances passed into mythology alongside everything else. But people who knew Ali in those years, people inside the camp, inside the circle, said there was something different about how he talked about fighting after that afternoon in Los Angeles. Something quieter, more interior, less about the performance of combat and more about the interior of it. He never mentioned Bruce by name in public, not in that context. But once, in a late career interview, a journalist asked Ali to describe what it felt like in the highest moments of a fight. The moments when everything aligned, when his hands moved faster than men could follow. Ali thought about it for a long time, and he said, "There's a place you get to sometimes where you stop fighting and the fighting just happens through you. You're not trying, you're not thinking, you're just there, present. And in that place, I never lost." The journalist wrote it down, published it. Many people read it as Ali talking about God, about faith, about divine grace flowing through an athlete's body. Maybe it was that. Maybe it was something else. Maybe it was the echo of a conversation on a gym floor in Culver City with a man who sat cross-legged and said simply, "No mind." Bruce Lee once wrote in his personal notes, notes that were never meant for any audience, never polished for performance, the following: "The usefulness of a cup is in its emptiness." He meant the fighter who has filled themselves with ego, with size, with reputation, with the need to be the largest presence in the room. That fighter is already beaten, because they have no space left to receive what's coming. No space to adapt, no space to become what the moment requires. The fighter who empties himself of all that, who arrives with nothing but awareness and will, that fighter is the most dangerous thing alive. Not because of strength, not because of size, because of the terrifying efficiency of someone who carries nothing unnecessary. Bruce Lee was 5'7", 135 pounds in training. He stood in a room with the most dangerous heavyweight alive and moved before the man could land air. He did not do it with muscle. He did not do it with size. He did it with something that cannot be bench pressed, cannot be measured on a scale, cannot be bought, borrowed, or inherited. He did it with understanding, the kind that takes years of suffering in small rooms to build, the kind that doesn't announce itself, the kind that simply, when the moment arrives, acts. Only 9 or 10 people saw what happened in that gym. Most of them are gone now. The photograph Carter took was found after his death in a shoebox inside a storage unit in Pasadena. His son, who had read about the afternoon in a letter his father wrote him years before, recognized the image immediately. 2 men, a small gym, one of them looking at the other with an expression of pure, unguarded wonder. The son kept it private, said his father would have wanted that. Some things are not for everyone. Some things are meant to live in the spaces between history and myth, where the light is different and ordinary measurement stops working. Where a 135-pound man can reach out and touch the edge of invincibility, and the most powerful man in the room reaches up and checks his jaw, not because it hurt, but because the proof of the thing had to exist somewhere. If this story moved something in you, subscribe. There are moments like this when buried everywhere in history, hidden confrontations, private rooms where legends met and the cameras weren't rolling. Stories that didn't make the headlines because the people involved were too real to perform for audiences. We find them. We tell them the way they deserve to be told. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, because the next story, you won't see it coming either.